innovators. Welcome to the Can Innovate podcast, where we highlight Canadian innovators who are changing the game. I'm Sapna Malhotra, your proud Canadian host. The Can Innovate podcast is about providing industry insights from Canadian innovators that are doing it. They are really crushing it out there in the industry. These innovators share insightful thought leadership, tips, tricks, tactics that we can all adopt. Plus, they even share their own entrepreneurial tales of successes and failures, and they really show us what we can learn. So let's continue to innovate our own businesses, lives, and careers. And if you know of any Canadian innovators that should be featured, drop us a line. You know I love getting feedback and hearing from everyone. You can contact me via email, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and of course, hint, hint, even in a review. All right, let's get to this episode. We are really lucky today. We've got Stephen Looi, who is the Director of Strategy and Origination at White Sheep. Stephen, welcome. Thank you for coming and joining us today. I am dying to know exactly what exactly is White Sheep, what exactly you're up to, and, if you can give us a bit of a background about you as well, that would be really great.
Sure, yeah. Hey, Sapna. Fantastic to be on the podcast today, and thank you so much for having me. So, Director of Origination and Strategy over at White Sheep Corp. So, first of all, White Sheep Corp is a cannabis operating company that is acquiring assets globally on both sides of the plant touching and not plant touching sort of fence. And so we invest in these companies and are very hands-on. We operate the companies and looking to participate in this once-in-a-generation opportunity that is the legalization of pot. And then so for what I do, Director of Origination and Strategy, I originate a lot of the deal flow, a lot of the acquisitions and sort of biz dev. And then also I'm integral in putting together the strategy in terms of who we're acquiring and why, sort of the overall market strategy at White Sheep. And then so yeah, as a bit of my background, I did an economics degree at U of Manitoba. During that degree, I left campus to move to Shanghai to start a video game company that did outsourcing of video game assets. Then I did 2 or 3 more IT things, CRM for pharmacy. I did a digital marketing company. And then I went off to B school. Coming out of B school, I did some urban agriculture. So I developed a food facility based on aquaponics in Newmarket, which was a lot of fun and super helpful for what I'm doing now in terms of looking at grow-ups. And then from there, I started looking at the pot space when it was up and coming. And in January 2016, started covering it on a full-time basis to support some angel activities I was doing down south. And then partway through that year, I ran into a group at McLean Watson, who is a traditional venture fund, and they made a lot of money monetizing IP, litigating it. But they were sunsetting that fund with 1 or 2 assets left to harvest and looking for their next thing to do. So we talked a little bit about the legalization of pot and what's happening, and so decided to spin out White Sheep Corp out of McLean Watson. And yeah, we've been looking and investing in companies, operating companies ever since.
No, it's brilliant. I've been really excited to kind of get down to talk about pot for a long time.
Yeah.
That's a good topic. So this is crazy. You're a serial entrepreneur. You've got an extensive IT background. Mm-hmm. You've got a background in video games, urban agriculture. You know how to do go-to-market strategies across international borders and waters. This is brilliant. It totally makes sense where you are. So let's talk about pot.
Yeah.
For our international listeners, can you give us an overview about what's happening in the cannabis industry in Canada?
Sure. So in Canada, we started a program here in the Chrétien days, so late 90s, of medical pot being available for medical purposes to patients. A very limited program, but it got rolled out in the late 90s, and then we had a conservative government come in and kind of keep it under wraps. They started to open it up in 2014. They started licensing, or new frameworks started coming out where they would license more patients and started licensing private facilities to grow pot. And so that started in 2014, and now we have an ecosystem in Canada of about 80 licensed producers, and I think the number is something like 200 to 300,000 patients it could be a little bit more now. And so that's been developing for a few years. Trudeau has come in and said he wants to legalize or have legislation ready for legal weed recreationally in 2018 this year. They set a date for July 1st, though starting to get walked back a bit. So they're just saying the summer. But yeah, we're going to have fully legal recreational weed available in Canada. And it's a giant opportunity, especially if you look at the stock market. Oh, that's another thing is Canada is one of the only jurisdictions to allow pot companies to list and access capital on the public markets. And so Toronto is kind of the center of the universe where it comes to capital flows for pot. So there's that, there's the domestic market, and then also with the opening up of our domestic market, the government has allowed for exports. And so we have begun to export to places like Australia, Germany, other European countries. And so Canada is going to be and is very well positioned to be the sort of powerhouse of pot globally. So it's really exciting.
Who knew that we would be the modern day hippies about peace, love, whiskey, love, pot?
Yeah, no kidding. But the one thing that was kind of scary there, well, not scary, but interesting, is the Americans actually beat us to recreational, at least some of them. And so Colorado, Washington, Oregon, and Alaska, now California, Jan 1st of this year, are all legal recreationally. So they actually beat us to that piece, but their federal framework has kept them out of really developing the industry and having access to export markets, etc. But yeah, it's weird. Canada is the leading leader in this industry.
Well, for all of our international listeners out there, another reason to come and visit Canada. You can have recreational pot.
Hell yeah. And get some of that BC bud that's finally tested and legal.
Oh, yeah. You no longer need to fly to BC to get that.
So exactly.
I had no idea that we were going to go into the exporting market for the cannabis. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, so right now, I think they're figuring the global market something like $53 billion, $54 billion. In Canada, contrast it with Canada, Canada's about $6 to $7 billion, they're saying. So it's a huge market out there. And if you look at the players all over the world that are, one, exporting, two, developing capacity and building companies outside of Canada, they're all Canadian companies, or they're all tied in with Canadian companies. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. We have a huge footprint outside of Canada.
Well, it's funny because on the Facebook group that we have, or Facebook page, I actually posted an article about 2 days ago that I got from Beta Alpha that actually shows about the Canadian cannabis industry, what a bright outlook it has in terms of the stock market for 2018.
Yeah, oh man, it has just been ridiculous. So like now it's January, the beginning of the year, the month, maybe a month and a half ago or 2 months ago, whenever I talk about Canopy Growth Corp, who is they are the market leaders right now in terms of market cap. When I talked about them back there a month ago, I would peg them at about $3.5 billion in market cap. And today, or yesterday when I looked, they were at 6.6 billion. So almost a doubling within a very sleepy sort of December, November, traditionally sleepy period. So it's going gangbusters. Retail bankers tell me that, they used to open up 4 or 5 new investment accounts a month. Now they're doing like 7 or 8 a week. And these are all people wanting to get exposure into the pot industry stocks. So yeah, the pot stocks are just flying high. I put out a word of caution though. There seems to be no rationality to it at all. Lots of these companies, like the vast majority of these companies, are not profitable just yet, and the pricing is not following any fundamentals. So I'd say buyer beware a little bit on that one. We just had a huge impetus where California went legal, and so we're riding that right now. But in July or August, whenever Canada does roll out recreational weed, that will be another big impetus event for positive movement in the stock market. Just watch out though.
No,
get in at the right time.
No, that's smart. So, by the way, guys, that's a very good point. We are not giving any financial advice or stock tips or anything. No. We're just talking about speculation, what the trends are, and having fun with the conversation. This is not for you to go, wait, I'm going to buy this stock and expect it to double overnight and become rich. So we are not giving any advice. Just for the record, we are stating this loud and clear.
Yes, ma'am.
So, the U.S. cannabis industry. So, when I look at Canada versus the U.S., where is it going to be cheaper, do you think?
Cheaper? That's interesting. So right now, it is actually cheaper in the U.S. Like the first 4 states that went legal recreational have are now maturing in terms of the market saturation. There's consolidation happening. And so that's driven prices down. And so in the US, you can get a pound wholesale for something like $800, maybe to $1,000. And so the retail side, it gets by pre-rolls for like $5 down there. Over here, it's a little bit different. It's still far outpacing capacity or supply. And so it's not that cheap as our American cousins. It will get there, but it's going to take, they're saying 2020, 2022 before the supply catches up with demand, and then things start to equalize. So it will get there, but it'll be a few years. So having said that, that's the opportunity right now for national and local producers in Canada to make money, to sell into that shortage.
So it's kind of crazy. So basically, I'm going to be able to go to the liquor store to buy pot in Canada, and that's how you'll be able to do it. Is that how it's going to be working? Like, how, if I wanted to get it, where would I go?
Yeah. So the feds have pushed it to the provinces to decide how to do the distribution of it. Health Canada regulates the production. And then in Ontario, the LCBO, which is our liquor store, has been given or has lobbied hard and taken the right to pot sales. So that's going to be a public venture, and it's going to be called the CRCO, I believe. And so it's not going to be in the LCBO stores. They're going to be standalone stores. There was some controversy over whether or not to co-locate pot stuff with alcohol. But so there'll be purpose-built stores in Ontario to buy pot that are owned by the government. Other provinces like Manitoba, Alberta, and I think Quebec as well have come up with this hybrid system where the government will form a distributor, and so we'll buy all the pot and then sell it to private retailers to go and to sell. So I kind of like that model where the government distributor has huge buying power and can buy it all in bulk, hopefully suppress price a little bit so that it can compete with the black market and still make money for the retailers. And then, open up retailing so that private individuals and companies can make some money off of this. That model's not so bad. Atlantic Canada seems to be going the patriarchal sort of government outlet model.
So do you think there still will be a black market for this, even when this gets all legalized?
Yeah, so the black market won't disappear overnight. It'll take a while. Colorado still has a very significant black market, even though it's been legal for however long. But I think once people get used to the idea of going to a store, the benefits of having a regulated product where it's tested and the audit trail of where it's been at, where it was grown, how it was grown, with what pesticides and fertilizers, and when the price comes down to really undercut black market pricing, that should dry up. But it will take us some time.
That's amazing. So what other opportunities do you think lay ahead for the cannabis industry, for other services to kind of get latched onto this? Like, I keep hearing about people developing apps so I can get it delivered to my doorstep. So I'm guessing with the regulation and how it's being distributed, that might curb that.
Sure. I mean, so in the macro sense, I think the real opportunity is when pharma gets a hold of pot and the molecules inside it and starts developing novel therapies, which are plant-based, and start placing synthetics that are out in the market. So like the top 15 drugs or drug categories by spend equal about 300 billion or 250 billion in the US. And each of those 15, it's shown that pot has potential, or the molecules within pot have the potential to be sources of novel and new drugs that attack each of those 15. So that's going to be a huge, huge boon for the industry and for pharma, and I think is going to just way overshadow what we're seeing right now in terms of just the pure consumption of pot. But on a more micro level, there's all kinds of opportunity, especially right now, and especially if you look at the US because of the regulations there. People are making a lot of money building warehouses to grow the pot, but these guys and the eventual ecosystem that comes out will need services and things like that. So like special software, special packaging, special fixtures for stores, on. And then there's plant touching things where like people that want to make edibles or topicals, or I've even seen suppositories out there. Anybody that wants to make products with THC or cannabinoid content in it, it's basically just be green fields, pardon the pun. But a brand new industry is going to get born in Canada in 2019 when they open up the licenses for edibles and other cannabinoid things. In the US, I wanted to mention that because the federal prohibition is still in place, and actually today we saw Jeff Sessions say he's going to rescind the Cole memo, which is an Obama-era memo saying feds should stay out of state affairs when it comes to legal medical pot. So he's rescinding that. But so because of this, the natural incumbents that would come in and serve every vertical in our industry can't. So we're talking about banks, software plays that would come in, like payroll software, ERP systems, you name it. Whatever multinational or national firm that would naturally take these industries or these verticals, they can't. And so the opportunity, and so who's doing it is a bunch of startups. And so that's been a huge opportunity for them. They're out creating their companies, they're out selling, doing the land grab. And I think most of them are looking forward to being acquired once the prohibition falls. And these natural incumbents, now that they can participate, once they enter, they're going to want to just acquire rather than build, is a lot of people's theses.
Wow. So there really is a lot of stuff that's on the horizon for this. It's a brand new ecosystem. Oh,
yeah, it's crazy. And the really cool thing is for the most part, you don't have to educate people in the market. So when you have a disruptive thing come out into the market, usually you have to teach people about it and it's new. There's a bit of a learning curve. People have to get familiar and comfortable. With pot, it's been around for so long. People have been smoking it. They know how to consume it, though more and more methods of consumption are coming out. But people understand it. And so it's like you just created a market overnight of billions and billions of dollars with ready consumers. So yeah, they're just phenomenal. And I can't think of an analog to that at all.
I don't think there is one.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, you're right. You don't need to educate. I mean, people have been doing it since the 60s, right? So.
Oh, geez. For tens of thousands of years, it's been around and people have been smoking it for a long, long time. Yeah. I mean, if you think about the internet or cable TV or other technology disruptions, it's taken a while for it to ramp. But marijuana's only sort of barrier to ramping is the legal framework. And so wherever it's legal, it just goes nuts.
So this is kind of really insane. I'm still stuck on the exporting piece. I mean, all these countries in Australia that seems to have sunshine year round, Germany, as you mentioned. I mean, why are they turning to Canada for the exports?
Mostly because we've done it. So we have like the strongest and widest ecosystem, I think, of licensed producers in the world. And our Health Canada regulations are very stringent, right. almost pharmaceutical. And so if you contrast that with the American ecosystem, I mean, it's pretty libertarian and pretty just do what you want almost. There definitely is regulations and stuff like that, but not to the level that Health Canada has prescribed. And so the countries outside are looking to Canada and the Canadian model a lot to replicate things, parts of it that they like, into their systems, and then looking to Canadian companies who have experience with it to actually come in and, I think, looked upon very favorably when they do their applications for licenses, especially if they team up with locals. But yeah, mostly it comes down to experience and having done it and the level of compliance that we have here.
So is there anything else that we should know about this industry, or anything else that's more exciting about this industry? Or do we have the 101 on pot now?
I think we kind of have it, but yeah, I would just say the one thing that's been super exciting to me is that now that money can actually be spent on research and development and innovation in the space, we've seen just a cornucopia of things get innovated with pot. And so before all this happened, I mean, there was really only one or two ways to consume pot, which was smoking it or maybe making your homemade edibles with it. And now there's just so many devices. There's like disposable vapes. There's a whole pre-roll sort of supply chain. There are suppositories, like I was saying, topicals. There are drinks. There are just a huge number of ways to consume. That's something I'm really excited about. And then again, also all the science now that's coming out on cannabinoids, on the 110 or so molecules in the plant that do things to the human body or even mammalian body is super exciting. And it's like, on one side, it's a little sad because this plant could have done all this good stuff for us before, but, it was illegal. But it's good because now we're finally getting the chance. And, there's possibilities for the plant to do a lot of good in the world and for people and for animals. Oh my God, the animal segment for CBD products is huge. So yeah, there's probably still unknown categories, unknown markets that haven't been tapped yet. That's also super exciting. I think we've covered it. That's probably a good 101, a good starting point.
Well, I'm definitely really excited to hear when this all launches. And you said it's going to be the summer of 2018 in Canada.
In Canada for recreational, yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. I think everyone's cottaging this summer will be very different.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. Oh, it's going to make for a very interesting summer.
Well, for international listeners, but cottaging, and I know it means something very different in the UK, but cottaging means we actually go up to a cabin by a lake and sit and barbecue and kind of get on the boats and go visit our neighbors, and we're out out in the wild. So pot tends to be a very
Perfect.
favorable type of activity that kind of goes with it all, being in the
Perfect
outdoors.
compliment for cottaging. Absolutely. And I'd be surprised if people aren't doing it now, but definitely a more prevalence once it's legal, I'm sure.
So this is brilliant. So Stephen, now I want to tap into you yourself because your background is so extensive. I mean, I thought my background and experience was confusing, but you definitely won the prize.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got the urban agriculture, retail, you've got video gaming, outsourcing to China, you name it, you've done it. So out of all of these different ventures, when you were kind of launching and being an entrepreneur itself and an innovator, is there something that, you know, of a lesson learned that you've kind of always kind of remember when you're doing all these different ventures, especially when you're advising all these other new companies for financing?
Yeah, I guess there's a couple things. One is I learned early on the importance of co-founders and advisors and things like that. Co-founders are amazing because they, one, cover gaps and skills that you don't have, or thinking or points of view, and they bring much more than that. They bring their network, they bring money potentially, and they also take things off of you, right? So they take things off of your plate, they take worry. It's another person to worry about things with you, and it's just somebody that knows what shit you're in, and you can bounce ideas off of and relate to. So co-founders, I think, are huge. And an entrepreneur told me once when I was in Shanghai that don't worry about your piece of the pie as it regards to, you know, taking investment or having co-founders or advisors sharing equity, but worry about the surface area of the pie. So yeah, sure, give away pieces, but together you're going to grow that pie so that like 2% of $1 billion company is way more than 100% of a, $100,000 company. That's a big one. The other thing is early on when you do these things, you're probably super passionate about it. And I just say guard against burnout. You get super passionate, you want to just rock and roll all day and all night on these things, but just be on guard for overdoing it. And you want to be able to maintain. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Very good advice. Very good advice. A marathon, not a sprint. I need to remember that. I might put this as a post-it note in front of my desk every time.
Yeah. Though, parts of the marathon are a sprint, like if you're getting to market or you want to finish a version of something, whatever, but just know you need balance. And so if you do that sprint, bring it back a little bit, balance, and then be able to keep going.
I love that.
Yeah.
So what type of tools or resources do you advise others that are starting a business or building a business or even scaling their business? Like, what can they tap into?
Yeah, sure. So in Canada, I think we do a fantastic job of supporting innovation at the seed stage, and we can debate about later stages. But at the beginning stage, the government of Canada has great programs. So there's the SHRED credits that are out there for innovation and technology and stuff like that. There are other government grants that cover, like artistic things. I remember when we were doing video games, there were Ontario grants for digital art. And then so there's all of that. There's like a lot of money and advice out there from the government that's available to you. I think especially if you're in a big hub like Toronto or Vancouver, Montreal, go to the networking events that are in your industry and maybe even some that are tangential, whatever. Meet people. In Toronto, at least, there's a great array of networking events that are happening, always happening. Go check those things out. And then the other thing as a startup is take advantage of free software that's out there. Your accounting software, all the Google suite of things. There's a lot of free software out there. Oh, I remember another one example is GIMP versus Photoshop. So we couldn't pay for Photoshop licenses, so we used GIMP. There's usually a good free version of whatever software you need out there. Spend the time, you'll save some money, and yeah, it'll be worthwhile.
Oh, that's great advice. Especially in the beginning stages, we never have money. So cash flow is always an issue and a challenge.
Yeah, exactly. So make those dollars stretch like crazy and find the tools out there that are free, which are out there.
That's amazing. So is there any other advice you'd give or provide to our aspiring or budding Canadian innovators?
So yeah, those are the big ones. I mean, for the startup folks, just really be on guard for burnout. I've seen a lot of companies start super strong, and sometimes these are solopreneurs especially that don't have co-founders to rely on, and everything's on one person's shoulders, and the first 6 months or a year or whatever, they're gung-ho on just killing themselves getting this business off the ground, and then they achieve some success or whatever, but are just too tired and too burned out to really exploit what their success is. So be on guard for burnout. Make sure you have balance. I think those are huge things for entrepreneurs, especially at the startup stage.
And especially being that you are financing a lot of these companies, you must be seeing this quite a bit, this burnout.
Luckily, not so much just yet. Lots of the companies we've looked at all have a good roster of co-founders. And so, they've divided and conquered very, very well. They definitely work hard, but they take their time off. And, I think it's something function of the industry as well. So the guys in pod don't mind relaxing a little bit. They understand they need to chill, and they do. I had one more piece of advice, which talk to everybody. So I was mentioning networking a little bit earlier before, but if you're starting something up, talk to everybody you can in your industry, outside your industry, your competitors. I offered a meeting for a friend who was starting a company and wanted to introduce him to a competitor, and he didn't want to take the meeting. 3 months later, understood that, I probably should benchmark or at least understand my competitor a little bit and wanted the meeting, but, it was too late. So I'd say take every single meeting you can, talk to everybody you can, and learn as much as you can, especially at the beginning. It never hurts to talk.
No, that's so true. And you know what? That's just great market research. It either validates some of your assumptions, or you know what? You got to figure out and retweak some of those assumptions, because you don't know what's actually happening, or you don't have the eyes in the back of your head. No one has enough time. That's phenomenal advice.
And keyboard research only takes you so far. Not everybody puts stuff on the web, and you find real good nuggets when you're in person with people. So I definitely would say go meet people.
Yeah, well, you got to do the field testing, right? So that makes
exactly.
Not just Google, but just it's real, get there on the ground. I love that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's huge.
So, Stephen, do you have any kind of favorite business philosophies or favorite quotes? Something that kind of keeps that eureka moment that helps you stay focused when you're doing all these different activities?
Well, one time a mentor of mine told me that it's the guy that's still standing wins. And I guess that regards, determination and tenacity, but also the burnout piece. So that's one. And I already talked about the piece of the pie one. I really like that one, because there's no point in being greedy early on, especially. So that's an important one. Otherwise, right now, nothing really comes to mind. I think I've spent my quotes already earlier on.
No worries. And is there a popular productivity tool that you use? Or you've seen a lot of your other people that are those different businesses that you're funding, what they're using? So
it's really different depending on their verticals and they're doing. But I would say, and I'll come back to the burnout thing or the health thing. It's important for you as an entrepreneur, innovator, whatever, to stay healthy, to stay centered, because it revolves around you. If you're not healthy, if you can't do stuff, then the business suffers. And so there are things like Headspace out there that is a meditation app. There's a sleep app. Geez, I forget the name of it. But wellness things and going to exercise, all super important. The Headspace, I think, is great for meditation, obviously, and just shutting off your brain for a little bit, practicing that. Those are super helpful. Otherwise, it's just the normal suite of sort of apps that everybody uses. The Gmail suite, Google Suite is fantastic, especially for my team, coordinating calendars and etc. Slack has been amazing to collaborate with and keep in touch with different groups. I think that's what I got for that one.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah.
What about books? Is there currently a book that you're reading or something that you recommend to other aspiring innovators out there?
I don't have one right now for innovators that I'm reading right now. I think one that I'd really recommend, especially to those innovators that are doing environmental justice or clean tech or social entrepreneurship things, is to look at, and this is my favorite book kind of regardless, is called The Ecology of Commerce, written by Paul Hawken. And he talks about how companies can use their business capital forces to do good things. And it's inspiring. It's, I think, about 15 years old now. So it's a little dated, but that really, really turned me on to the social entrepreneurship thing and how business can really be a positive force for change.
No, that's brilliant. And because social entrepreneurship is such a huge thing as well.
Yeah.
And it's a growing, piece on its own. So that's fantastic. I haven't heard that book, so I'm definitely going to put in the show notes for everybody because that's phenomenal.
Yeah. And he's got a few more since he's written that one. And I check those out if you're into the social entrepreneurship thing.
Now, I'm guessing you don't have very much downtime, but is there a favorite Canadian hotspot, hideaway, restaurant, food?
Yeah, so there's a couple. One is there is a diner type thing, a greasy spoon around the corner from my house that I love to go to, and you could probably find me there on the weekends. It's called The Tulip, and they advertise themselves as like one of the best steak places or whatever, but the steak is not bad. It's not amazing, but I go there for the breakfast, and they have this amazing like $12 4 eggs and all like sausage, bacon, and pea meal and potatoes, which is a huge plate in and of itself. And then they give you like 2 pancakes at the end. It's, oh my God, it's amazing. A little disastrous to the diet, but it's amazing. And then my other one, I think, is like my favorite dim sum place, which is in Richmond Hill, and it's called the Golden Abalone Court, and it's up in Richmond Hill. It's a dim sum place where you'll find all the sort of Chinese, Hong Kong expats there. Fantastic. Like the food is amazing. Is a value play, and it's just phenomenal. I'm looking forward to doing for Chinese New Year.
Oh, that's brilliant. Now you've got me really, really super hungry.
Likewise.
So in 2018, I don't know if I told you this before, but I actually decided that for every guest that I have in the podcast, all the places they recommend, I'm going to actually try to go to every one of those places.
Oh, dude, amazing.
Yeah, so...
Let's do dim sum together then. I'll take you there.
Done! Oh, excellent. I'm totally in. I love good food.
Yeah.
And finally, Stephen, how...
Maybe we'll smoke some pot beforehand. I'm not sure.
Oh, there goes the PG-13 element in this program. I would definitely love to do a Grow Ops drive-by. I would love to see what a Grow Ops really looks like. I think that would be fascinating to me.
We are looking at something close to the GTA, and, if that closes and once we get into ops, I would love to, give you a little tour.
Ooh, maybe we could do a Facebook Live and show the other listeners out there. That'd be interesting. We'd have to get our, the security clearance as long as that's okay. But yeah, absolutely. I'm willing. Let's try. All right. I love this. So finally, Stephen, how can our listeners connect with you?
Oh, yes, sure. So I have an Instagram, which is Baking with Steve, and it's a little pun. And then I also have, so my email at White Sheep Corp is slooi, SLOOI at whitesheepcorp.com. Feel free to message me if you are looking to get in the industry, if you are in the industry, if you're an investor and you want some exposure to the industry. We have a fantastic portfolio and portfolio strategy, which, pat myself on the back. And so, yeah, feel free to reach out, and I'm very happy to talk. As I mentioned, talk to everybody.
I love it. That's done, and we're going to put that in the show notes for sure.
Awesome.
Thank you, Stephen. That was brilliant.
Wicked. Very happy to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you, innovators, for joining us this week. Our Facebook page is moving and growing each week, so please join us. I post a lot of interesting articles about Canadian innovation trends, the movers, the shakers, plus things that I think are just funny. And if you know any Canadian innovators that should be featured, drop us a line. I love getting feedback and hearing from everyone. You can contact me on email, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and of course, hint, even in a review. I'm still channeling Fury feed that ratings and reviews are my oxygen. And remember, this is our podcast. I look forward to hearing and chatting with you next week.